There is a book, older than most modern Bibles, hidden from the eyes of the masses, and once revered by the ancient Essenes and early Christians. A book that claims time itself is not random but perfectly divided, that the history you've been taught is a fractured mirror and the reflection it hides is divine order. They call it the Book of Jubilees, but you've likely never read it, and that's no accident. This ancient text was once read alongside Genesis and Exodus, yet now it's missing from most Bibles, cast aside, condemned, or conveniently forgotten. Why? Because within its pages lies a cosmic calendar, a timeline so meticulously constructed, it challenges the entire Judeo-Christian framework as we know it. It doesn't just retell the stories of the patriarchs, Abraham, Moses, Enoch. It reorganizes them, refines them, reveals them in accordance with a sacred rhythm, the Jubilee cycle. A pattern of sevens that echoes the creation of the universe itself, a divine matrix of time, encoded with spiritual precision and perhaps forbidden power. But here's the twist. The Book of Jubilees doesn't contradict Scripture. It amplifies it, revealing celestial laws, angelic hierarchies, and a worldview so vast and orderly, it threatened the very institutions that sought to control the sacred narrative. So why was it banned? What secrets does it reveal about time, prophecy, and humanity's destiny? And perhaps most haunting of all, who decided we weren't ready to know? In this episode, we'll unlock the mysteries of the Book of Jubilees, from its hidden timeline to the esoteric codes buried within. We'll travel back through ancient scrolls, forbidden councils, and lost teachings, exploring not just what this book says, but why the world wasn't meant to hear it. This isn't just biblical history. It's the story of how time was silenced. Let the unveiling begin. To understand why the Book of Jubilees was cast into the shadows, we must first return to the twilight between memory and myth, a time when Scripture was not yet sealed. When sacred texts flowed like rivers, branching into oral traditions, scrolls, and lost codices. The Book of Jubilees, also known as the Little Genesis, emerged around the 2nd century BCE. Scholars believe it was originally written in Hebrew, though only fragments remain in that tongue. What survives today was preserved in Ge'ez, the sacred language of Ethiopian Christianity. This is no coincidence. While Western churches rejected it, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church canonized it, a rare act of spiritual defiance, preserving knowledge others sought to bury. But why would this book provoke such fear? Because Jubilees reorders time. It insists that history unfolds through precise 7-year cycles, culminating in a jubilee every 49th year. This isn't just a poetic structure, it is divine architecture, a cosmic metronome set by the Creator himself. Within this framework, every significant event, be it the fall of Adam, the flood of Noah, or the covenant with Abraham, happens not randomly, but according to the sacred clock. And herein lies the challenge. Where mainstream chronology sees chaos and compromise, Jubilees sees divine order, but that order requires removing the lunar calendar, widely used in both Jewish and Islamic traditions. Jubilees strictly defends a 364-day solar calendar, claiming the moon was a deceiver that leads people astray. For ancient religious authorities, this was more than heresy, it was a cosmic rebellion. The philosophical depth of the Book of Jubilees cannot be understated. It does not merely retell Genesis, it rewrites the metaphysics of time, law, and covenant. Angels are not just messengers, here they are administrators of time. The heavenly tablets, referenced multiple times, record not just commandments, but destinies. Human history is depicted as pre-written, yet not predestined, a paradox, reflecting divine intention and human agency intertwined. Furthermore, Jubilees elevates purity, law, and ritual order to the highest levels. It critiques intermingling of peoples, foreign customs, and what it perceives as corruption of the priesthood. For the elite in ancient Jerusalem, those shaping Second Temple Judaism, such strict views were both threatening and politically inconvenient. To uphold Jubilees would have meant reorganizing religious calendars, festivals, and authority structures, and that was unacceptable. Then came the councils, the murky gatherings of early Christian leaders and Roman ecclesiastics, where politics and theology danced in a smoky room. Books like Jubilees were not just dismissed, they were deliberately excluded, deemed apocryphal, too Jewish for Christians, too Christian for Jews, too dangerous for Rome. A book with no home in the newly forming canon. Yet underground, in the caves of Qumran, the Dead Sea Scrolls whispered another story. Multiple copies of Jubilees were found there preserved by the Essenes, a mystical sect awaiting the apocalypse. To them, Jubilees was not forbidden, it was foundational, a guidebook for the end times. So, what does this tell us? The Book of Jubilees wasn't forgotten. It was forbidden. Its banishment was not due to error or inaccuracy, but because it preserved a worldview too complete, too structured, too dangerous for the chaos of empire and institution. What happens when a book restores the rhythm of the divine, but disrupts the rhythm of power? In the next section, we'll peel back the layers, exploring how the Book of Jubilees reframes creation, unveils heavenly realms, and dares to tell history through the eyes of eternity. Imagine this. You're standing at the edge of Timeno in a metaphorical sense, but in the architecture of the cosmos itself. Before you unfolds a radiant scroll etched not with ink, but with light. Each mark is a moment. Each segment, 7 years, and every 7th segment, a jubilee. This is how the Book of Jubilees wants us to see Timeno as linear chaos, but as sacred rhythm. A divine song with precise measures, every beat of history orchestrated, every event unfolding in cosmic harmony. But this isn't just a poetic vision, it's a recalibration of everything we thought we knew. Let's begin at the beginning, Genesis. Where the traditional Bible leaves mystery, Jubilees fills in the silence. When Cain is banished after murdering Abel, Genesis offers no further insight. Jubilees, however, claims he built a city named after his son, and his descendants became the first to practice sorcery and warfare. Jubilees doesn't just document, they warn. The text exposes a pattern, how disobedience to divine order accelerates the collapse of civilization. It rewrites the story of the Watchers, the fallen angels, into a tale of celestial rebellion, explaining how they mated with human women and brought forth the Nephilim, giants who ravaged the earth. This isn't fringe mythology, it's foundational cosmology. Jubilees anchors these stories not in allegory, but calendar-specific dates, assigning them a place in divine history. Then there's the matter of Enoch. In most Bibles, Enoch is mentioned briefly, and Enoch walked with God. Then he was no more. But Jubilees expands this enigmatic figure into a prophetic sage who recorded all human history and future events on heavenly tablets. In the worldview of Jubilees, nothing is lost. Everything is written, everything is known. And this is where the tension sharpens. Because if all is written, who controls the ink? The Book of Jubilees introduces heavenly scribes, celestial beings tasked with recording human action, cosmic law, and the unfolding of destiny. They are not passive observers, they are archivists of the divine will. Here, the Book of Life isn't just a metaphor, it's a literal registry in the hands of angelic record keepers. This concept is radical. It implies that morality isn't determined by emotion or opinion, it is structured, observable, recorded. Actions echo not just across lifetimes, but through time itself. Every moral failure throws off the sacred rhythm. Every act of justice restores harmony to the divine clockwork. Now, think about how threatening this would be to those in power, religious or political. If time is sacred, and its structure can be known, then authority is no longer based on position, but on alignment with that structure. Jubilees challenges empires not with armies, but with order. And the calendar. Oh, the calendar. Perhaps the most heretical element in Jubilees is its rejection of the lunar calendar. It accuses the moon of being deceptive, claiming that relying on its phases would lead people to celebrate festivals on the wrong days, causing confusion and error. Instead, it demands a 364-day solar calendar, mathematically perfect, evenly divisible by 7, in harmony with the weekly Sabbath. For Jubilees, timekeeping isn't a logistical issue, it's spiritual warfare. The wrong calendar leads to the wrong worship. The wrong worship leads to separation from God. And here we encounter the core thesis of the book. Time itself is a covenant. It's not something we pass through, it's something we keep. Break the rhythm, and you break the relationship. This changes everything. History becomes a test of rhythm. Prophecy becomes a schedule. And salvation, not just belief, but returning to the divine calendar. And still, the book was silenced. Why? Because it doesn't just question the narrative, It restores the mechanism. And once people understand the mechanism, how sacred time works, how divine justice is tracked, how human choices echo eternally, then manipulation becomes harder, institutions lose their grip, and people start to awaken to a larger order, a divine order. But this is only the beginning. In the next section, we'll dive deeper into the symbolic codes, hidden teachings, and controversial claims of the Book of Jubilees that have made it one of the most powerful and suppressed texts in all of ancient scripture. If the Book of Jubilees were merely a revision of Genesis, perhaps it would have survived the canon. But what lies deeper within its pages is not just a retelling, it is a revelation, a coded transmission of divine patterns buried under familiar stories. And once uncovered, it threatens to dismantle the illusion that history is random or that religion is merely ritual. Because Jubilees doesn't just talk about time, it divinizes it, and in doing so, it unlocks a vision of the universe where time, morality, and even memory itself are sacred technology. Let's return to the heavenly tablets, arguably the most mysterious element in the entire text. These are not allegories. According to Jubilees, they are literal celestial archives, inscribed by angelic scribes before the creation of the world. They contain the laws of nature, the destinies of nations, and the decisions of men. Every covenant, every commandment, every historical shift is first written in heaven, then played out on earth, like a divine screenplay. And this flips conventional theology on its head. Because if the tablets already contain all human action, does that mean we have no free will? Jubilees suggests something more mystical, that free will exists, but the consequences are already woven into the fabric of time. In this view, time doesn't trap us, it records us. We are co-authors of a scroll written in real time, watched by heaven. This leads us to one of the most suppressed teachings of Jubilees, the sacred lineage of law and light. According to the book, Noah received more than survival, he received divine laws. He passed them down to Shem, who gave them to Abraham, who then taught them to Isaac, and so on. This continuous priestly line forms a spiritual backbone behind the scenes of Scripture. It implies that God's law wasn't first given at Sinai, it was preserved from the beginning, whispered through generations of those who could hear it. In other words, Moses wasn't the beginning, he was the echo. This dangerous idea undermines the exclusivity of Mosaic authority. If divine knowledge was passed secretly, before Sinai, then truth does not come from political position, it comes from alignment with celestial memory. Then there is the matter of angels and watchers. Jubilees describes a world infused with divine presence. Angels aren't far-off beings, they are caretakers of nations, observers of human law, and guardians of the sacred order. Every nation has its angelic prince. Every season has its watcher, and when humans rebel against the divine pattern, it is not just sin, it is cosmic sabotage. In this way, Jubilees aligns with older Enochian visions, the idea that reality itself is under surveillance not by governments, but by heaven. Not with cameras, but with memory. Perhaps most provocative of all is Jubilees' treatment of Israel's identity. The book declares that Israel was chosen not arbitrarily, but because of their supposed alignment with the 364-day rhythm. Other nations, it claims, fell out of sync and descended into spiritual chaos. Jubilees presents Israel not just as a people, but as a frequency, a nation vibrating in tune with sacred time. This wasn't just theology, it was cosmic nationalism, the idea that spiritual authority is earned by attunement, not lineage. And that idea, dangerous. For empires and religious leaders alike, this was intolerable. Because if divine favor isn't inherited, but cultivated, if truth isn't monopolized, but remembered, if time isn't random, but rhythm, then every hierarchy based on control collapses. Jubilees whispers that we've forgotten the calendar of the soul, that beneath our busy hours and mechanical months lies a deeper tempo, a heartbeat of creation, still pulsing beneath our distractions. So the book was buried, labeled heresy, stripped from the canon not because it was false, but because it was too exact. In the next section, we'll journey from the cosmic to the personal. How can we, in a fragmented modern world, reclaim this sacred rhythm? How can the wisdom of Jubilees be applied, not just studied, but lived? We'll explore practical techniques to reconnect with divine time, and rediscover what it means to walk in sync with the eternal. So, how do we live this ancient wisdom? How do we, in the whirlwind of deadlines, artificial calendars, and fractured routines, return to the sacred rhythm the Book of Jubilees speaks of? The answer lies not in abandoning our world, but in reweaving it with remembrance. The first step is to reclaim time as sacred. In a society where time is money and every hour is monetized, we forget what the ancients knew instinctively, that time is a living force. It is not something to manage, it is something to honor. Practice 1. The Sabbath as Alignment Ritual. Jubilees insists that the Sabbath was established at creation not as a rule, but as a cosmic breath, one day out of 7 to step out of linear time and into divine stillness. Begin by choosing one day or even 1 hour where you completely unplug. No screens, no consumption, just presence. Walk, reflect, light a candle, speak aloud. I return to the rhythm of the heavens. This act alone begins the realignment. Practice 2. Personal Jubilee Mapping. According to Jubilees, your life unfolds in 7-year cycles. Every 7th year is a spiritual Sabbath, a time of review, release, and rebirth. Here's how to tap into it. Divide your life into 7-year chapters. Ask, what was the lesson? What had to be let go? What was restored? You'll notice a pattern: emotional, spiritual, even physical shifts that mirror this hidden rhythm. Your next step: prepare for your next Jubilee. Practice 3. Seasonal Rituals of Light and Memory. Jubilees speaks of the appointed times, moments when the veil between heaven and earth thins. Solstices, equinoxes, the changing of seasons. These were not just weather patterns, they were gateways. Reintroduce seasonal rituals. Write prayers or intentions during equinoxes. Create small altars with elements of each season: leaves, stones, water. Read sacred texts or poetry under moonlight, not to worship the moon, but to reclaim the night from distraction. Practice 4. Record your own tablets. The Book of Jubilees is a chronicle of divine memory. What if your life, too, was being recorded not in judgment, but in remembrance? Start your own heavenly tablet journal. Each entry, a reflection. What did I realign with today? What rhythm did I resist? Where did I remember the sacred? Over time, this practice becomes a spiritual mirror showing you where you're in harmony and where you've drifted from the beat. Practice 5. Live prophetically, not reactively. Jubilees doesn't just catalog the past, it anticipates the future. It teaches us to live with intention, as though the future is already echoing back to us. This means, speak words as though they shape tomorrow. Forgive as though cycles are ending. Create as though eternity is watching. Because according to Jubilees, it is. These aren't just mystical habits, they are tools to recode your nervous system, to help you remember the sacred within the ordinary. In a world obsessed with productivity and acceleration, the teachings of the Book of Jubilees invite us to slow down, to align, to become keepers of divine rhythm once more. Not just for yourself, but for the restoration of the world's forgotten song. Next, we'll conclude with a reflection summarizing the revelation, and leaving you with a question no algorithm can answer. The Book of Jubilees was not banned because it was broken. It was banned because it was too complete. It dared to say, time is not chaos, it is choreography. It whispered that our ancestors didn't stumble through history blindly. They walked to a rhythm set by the very heart of creation. And when you read between the lines, you realize it's not just about patriarchs or prophets. It's about you. Your life. Your story, your choices, etched like starlight into the scrolls of the unseen. Jubilees reminds us that we are not adrift in meaningless days. We are part of a sacred continuum, a cosmic liturgy written across centuries, and to remember that is to awaken. But maybe that's what frightened the gatekeepers most. Because a soul that walks in rhythm cannot be controlled. A heart that lives by divine time cannot be bought. And a mind that sees history as sacred will never bow to fabricated timelines. So the book was buried. But now you know. And knowledge, once revealed, cannot be unlearned. So here's the question I leave you with. What would your life look like if you stopped chasing time and started listening to it? Because maybe, just maybe, the future isn't something you run toward. It's something you remember. If this journey stirred something in you, share it. Comment with your thoughts, your doubts, your questions. Subscribe if you're ready to go deeper. This channel isn't about entertainment, it's about revelation. Until next time, stay aligned, stay awakened, and walk gently as if time is watching.